Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today we're going to talk about this story out of the state of New York, because you have somebody who was indicted, who worked in the highest levels of New York state government, who for nearly a decade is being accused of being a spy for the People's Republic of China and for the CCP in particular. And not only was she crafting policy that negatively impacted residents of the state of New York, because of her level of access to New York state government, because of her level of influence, and because of the timeline in which this campaign was running, she actually impacted policy in every single state in the union. This particular spy made your life worse if you're a resident of the United States of America, and I'm going to go beyond the headlines and explain to you exactly why that is the case. But before we get into that, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
I think, when people say diversity and inclusion, I think everybody agrees, or most people generally agree, that it's a good thing, right? But I think right now we also need to bring in the word equity, right? Diversity is when you say that there's, many different types of people with different backgrounds, and they're all, invited to the table. Inclusion is when, we include all of their ideas. But equity is when we make sure that all of the people who are at the table have equal access to making sure that their ideas and their thoughts are heard. And unfortunately, I think some of the statistics that you quoted is that we don't have that much leadership or representation.
So the woman at the center of this is called Linda Sun. Now, if you search Linda Sun on YouTube.com or on Google, you will get a YouTuber with 1.2 million subscribers. This is not the person that we're talking about, so please kindly add Hochul or add New York to your search results so you can get some of this absolutely crucial information. And a lot of the local news media is on the more salacious, scandalous portions of this story. Let me give you a little bit of a bite from my local CBS affiliate, which honestly, comparatively, has more detailed information as compared to other local news reporting.
And a former aide to Governor Hochul and former Governor Cuomo charged tonight with acting as an illegal agent to the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party.
The indictment, more than 60 pages long, alleging she and her husband gained millions of dollars in financial benefits to buy luxury properties and fancy cars.
So common themes from the reporting that you will hear about is the $4.1 million house in Manhasset, is the fact that they owned a bunch of different various luxury cars, and of course the Hawaii property, as well as other methods of compensation. And in fact, one of the most hilarious methods of compensation that this woman received was a particular style of salted duck that was prepared for her by a chef well known in the Chinese Communist Party and shipped to her parents.
Really, one of the most interesting details in this indictment is that the kickbacks also included a delicacy, a dish called Nanjing salted duck. This is a regional specialty in China, and apparently prosecutors say that she was given 16 meals of salted duck. These were delivered, and they were prepared by a Chinese government's personal chef. So this was all done, we were used to hearing about gold bars or money, but apparently this was kind of a delicious side benefit, a kickback of salted duck involved.
Now look, it is just objectively funny that a Chinese spy was being paid in part in duck. But one of the things that you miss when you focus on the salacious is crucial details that are left out in these local news segments. For instance, we were told that this woman's husband, who by the way is one of the people that money was being funneled to on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party for this particular spy, owns a liquor store in Flushing, Queens.
Linda Sun in federal court charged in a 65-page indictment with using various positions in New York state government to further the goals of the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party in exchange for funds to live a lavish lifestyle, including a multi-million-dollar Manhasset mansion and a fleet of fancy cars, including a Ferrari. Husband Chris Hughes, the owner of a Flushing, Queens liquor store, was also hit with a host of charges, including money laundering and bank fraud.
Now, this is in fact true, but is not the extent of it, and it actually is not the primary mechanism in which money was funneled to this particular family. The actual mechanism was a seafood exporting corporation that was supposedly shipping lobsters to the Chinese mainland. But in fact, this was utilized as a method to funnel millions upon millions of dollars into the coffers of this particular family.
The couple's $4.1 million home on the North Shore of Long Island was raided by the FBI 6 weeks ago. Agents carrying out boxes of records. records. The indictment included several pictures of Linda Sun with Chinese officials, like this one from September 2019 in Beijing, celebrating the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China.
So while I do have criticisms for a lot of the coverage of this particular story, this CBS segment is better than others. Right there, you found out what a lot of people are reporting, which is that she was denying meetings to different various Taiwanese officials, but on top of that, is alleged to have forged Governor Kathy Hochul's signature on official letterhead, inviting Chinese Communist Party officials to New York, which ultimately ended up getting them visas, which ultimately ended up bringing more and more spies to our country that were operating as agents of this foreign hostile power.
She was also charged with forging Hochul's signature on a letter inviting Chinese officials to come to New York, which they used to get visas, changing the messaging of state officials regarding issues of importance to the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party, obtaining official state proclamations for Chinese officials without proper authorization, and violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which requires individuals to register with the Department of Justice if they are involved in political or advocacy work for foreign governments.
However, it is important to get into the details because a lot of the Hochul stuff is very interesting and compelling, and it shows lack of security and all of that. But what's more crucial is what happened during the Cuomo years, because she did hold a bunch of different positions. Let me highlight a few of them. Prior to her roles in the Hochul administration, Sun served a number of roles in the Cuomo administration, including a high-ranking post in the state's economic development branch, involved in organizing international trade missions, according to her LinkedIn account. Sun's alleged influence operation campaign lasted from 2015 to 2023, and the indictment says she regularly communicated with Chinese government officials about her efforts to promote China's reputation in the Empire State.
She is charged with blocking representatives of the Taiwanese government from having access to high-level New York State officials. "No meeting, please," she wrote to an assemblyman who wanted the governor to meet with Taiwanese officials. "Kindly decline. Do not want her to wade into this China-Taiwan sensitivity."
Now, as stated in the local news segment, her work often involved ensuring neither Cuomo nor Hochul's offices recognized Taiwan as an official country. For decades, the People's Republic of China has not recognized the government of Taiwan and has refused to maintain diplomatic relations with countries that do. Now, like I said, she was limiting contact between high-ranking state officials and Taiwanese representatives while relaying that information to Chinese officials. When the Taiwanese government donated 200,000 masks to New York during the COVID-19 pandemic in April of 2020, Sun allegedly ensured Cuomo's office didn't publicly acknowledge the donation and kept a Chinese official apprised. At another point, she acknowledged almost having a heart attack when a Cuomo press release referred to Taiwan as a country, which she immediately removed. Quote, "I certainly have managed to stop all relationships between the Taiwanese Economic and Cultural Office and the state," Sun wrote to a Chinese official in 2019, according to the indictment. "I have denied all requests from their office." Quote, "I know and do appreciate your help," the official responded. "With us now in the political section, you are the most important hub for connecting us with Cuomo and his team." Now look, while a lot of this stuff is definitely bad, the fact that she worked in high-ranking positions specifically related to economic development and thus was orienting New York policy and the New York economy to be more dependent on the Chinese, definitely a huge problem. And of course, what she was doing to the Taiwanese Culture Office, also a disaster. But one of the things that you may have glossed over is the fact that Governor Andrew Cuomo did not give credit to the Taiwanese government for donating 200,000 masks, PPE, which was crucially needed during the course of the pandemic. And this is what really needs to get focused. All of the different various ways that this particular woman influenced New York state policy during the pandemic. In fact, there is more in this article and in the indictment that I think is absolutely crucial for you to understand. So in March of 2020, Sun arranged for a Chinese government official to surreptitiously listen to a conference call of New York state government leaders who are discussing how to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic and a rise in hate crimes against Asians, according to the indictment. Now, the reason that this and other COVID-19 related stuff from the indictment really stuck out to me is because I happen to have a very detailed memory of the pandemic of the year 2020 and who was, in fact, the most important person in the Democratic Party, the most important governor in the nation, and that, of course, was Andrew Cuomo. And in 2020, this woman is having the CCP listen in on the strategy calls where they're trying to shift the focus away from China's responsibility in unleashing this virus onto the world to a campaign against anti-Asian crimes. And you guys will all remember that this is the direction that the Democratic Party went to because this was the best way in their minds to attack the Orange Man. But more crucially, the reason the Democratic Party went in this direction is because during this period of time, Andrew Cuomo was the de facto leader of the Democratic Party. You guys remember he was on TV almost every night with Chris Cuomo, getting praised by all these different Democrats, and other Democrats across the country, in order to get that praise, would copy his policies. Now, this had absolutely devastating and cascading impacts on our nation, because you guys will remember that social media companies would actually ban people from talking about the virus originating from Wuhan as misinformation and disinformation, because that came from the evil Orange Man, President Trump, and they were all about elevating reliable, authoritative sources. And since those sources took their messaging directly from the Democratic Party, and Andrew Cuomo was the leader, at least symbolically, of the Democratic Party at that point in time, this woman was crafting censorship policy in the United States of America on behalf of the CCP during the most crucial time in our recent history with the COVID-19 pandemic. And again, the proof in the pudding is in the taste, and this indictment shows us over and over and over again that this woman was constantly changing language, constantly altering information as a method to promote the CCP, to suppress Taiwan, and to, of course, suppress subversive American candidates in favor of the Chinese government.
The indictment included several pictures of Linda Sun with Chinese officials, like this one from September 2019 in Beijing, celebrating the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China.
And this thing was so obvious from the jump. This woman is in photo after photo with Chinese Communist Party officials. She would go over there multiple times. Again, the visa fraud, bringing in more and more spies, forging Governor Hochul's signature, the overall influence campaign, the fact that we have all these different various communications where she shows that she's working double time to boot Taiwan out. All of this is clear, and she also got Governor Kathy Hochul to send propaganda messages over for China to use for their various different methods, just as proof of the fact that they were completely in their pocket. And we have that video for you, so let me play it for you. Hey guys, Editing Sean here. So I was going to show you the clip that I promised that I was going to show you, but it turns out after I uploaded the first copy of this video that clip contains copyrighted music. Because of that, I'm not going to actually insert the clip in here. It's linked in the description. It is both in the Gothamist article under where it says sources, and I have the original video from Facebook also linked so you can use that. So whatever floats your boat, check it out. It's kind of goofy and it looks like the image that I'm showing you, but the music is just overwhelming and I can't do anything about it. And I've tried multiple times to give you multiple cuts of this clip. Now look, it is an absolute disaster for our country and for our nation. The fact that this woman had this much influence in New York State government, especially during the pandemic time, is devastating for everybody out there in the audience who had to live under policies that were basically copied from Andrew Cuomo, that were heavily influenced by the CCP. For all these different various news outlets that were actually trying to get at the truth, get at the origin of the virus. For all these people who wanted to talk about the suppression and censorship, understand that this woman was influencing the man that was the most important authoritative source according to all these social media accounts at that absolutely crucial time. And one of the ways that, of course, she got away with it, one of the big things that, of course, she was promoting was DEI.
But equity is when we make sure that all of the people who are at the table have equal access to making sure that their ideas and their thoughts are heard. And unfortunately, I think some of the statistics that you quoted is that we don't have that much leadership or representation.
Now, look, a lot of people will point out that DEI and a bunch of these different ideologies are Marxist ideologies, so it makes perfect sense for the Chinese government to promote it. But the fact of the matter is, even though that is a perfectly sensible ideological motivation for promoting these kind of things, it goes beyond that, because this woman for nearly a decade was enriching herself. Her husband, who is believed to only own a liquor store by many of the people surrounding them, was driving super high-end luxury cars, owned a $4 million house, and her family was being enriched, and all these other people were being brought into this country and put on the payroll of this particular scheme, and that went without suspicion. And one of the reasons why is because a lot of people believed that it would be evil white racism to be suspicious of somebody who's constantly lobbying on behalf of China, is Chinese herself, and obviously should have raised a bunch of different red flags. And no, I'm not talking about the CCP red flags that she was raising over the New York State Capitol during the time that she was influencing our government. But in reality, much in the same way that during the pandemic, when we should have been focusing on where this virus came from and holding the Chinese government accountable, they were able to shift the focus away from her, away from the misdeeds of the Chinese, to evil white racism, to fighting against prejudice, because the most important thing for you guys out there in the world to understand is that it's better to be spied upon, it is better to have your system rigged against you than be accused of being an evil white racist. So yeah, this woman was able to wield this influence. Who knows how many people she was able to bring into the operation, how deep this goes. And by the way, you guys can very much expect to have similar influence operations in all 50 states, regardless of the party that is currently governing. Now, of course, all the different diversity initiatives and all that align better with the Democratic Party. And in this particular case, because Cuomo was so heavily promoted, her level of influence was more devastating than any other operation that was influencing any other governor at the time. But it could be that this is going on right now in your state, under your nose. This is just the person who ended up getting caught. Now, of course, I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you think I'm exaggerating the devastating impact that this woman had, not just on New York, but our country as a whole? Or do you think there's a lot to it? And are you going to be tuning in to the trial? Again, all your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias, support me with the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about a Chinese spy infiltrating New York State. Till next time.